Hello, everyone. My name is Patricia. One of my hats I'm wearing here at Extreme Hotel is also being the marketing manager for, the entire resort here. It's the Yoga Loft at Extreme Hotel. And I'm super excited to finally speak to Greg of the Eagle's Nest on Lake, how do you pronounce it? Atitlan? You have a really
That's
nice
right.
pronunciation about it.
Lake
And
Atitlan. Yeah.
Atitlan,
Hi.
yeah. Hi. So glad to have you here, Greg. Because we were following the Eagle's Nest since quite a while and admired the pretty Instagram photos as well. And whenever there's a new blog post out, I read it. And yeah, we are so curious who's behind that beautiful resort and the history. And I guess that's where we jump straight in. Greg, maybe you want to introduce yourself a bit.
Okay, great. Hi, Patricia. Very nice to be talking with you and sharing a little bit about Eagle's Nest and my personal story. I suppose it goes back to having an existential crisis maybe eight years ago or so, where I had everything and yet I felt incomplete and wondering what I was doing with my life and where home was.
Okay.
And at that time, I'd already been living in Guatemala for 12 years in Antigua. And at that time, I was also traveling a lot to be close to my daughter. I was mostly in Europe. And other than building my relationship with her and traveling, I wasn't really building anything else. I was building experiences, seeing the world. However, something was missing. And at that point, I asked the question, where's home? And that definitely was Guatemala. And then where in Guatemala? And the answer was San Marcos, La Laguna, which is where Eagle's Nest is. Because I really felt that was my cosmic family. That was the community I related with the most. And that's where I wanted to be. And within a few months, I bought the land, not to build a retreat space, that was to build my home. And that was the starting point of Eagle's Nest as we know it today. Although at the time, I had no idea I was going to build a retreat space.
Yeah.
That comes later. That's the next chapter of the book. A few years later, I gave myself a year to say yes to something that I'd done in my life that I thought had the potential to become a passion. And so I picked acroyoga, acrobatic yoga. So I spent the whole, when I was 39, the whole year saying yes to jams and retreats, and I ended with a teacher training in Mexico. And I came back from Mexico all happy and thinking I actually found my passion for the first time. I found something I'm deeply passionate about and love. In part because of the community aspects, because of the personal growth aspect, because acroyoga touches on so many parts about personal development, going beyond our boundaries. And the question that emerged from that is, how do I get the best acroyogis to come play? And that's where Eagle's Nest, the retreat space, was born with that question.
Wow.
And the rest is history. And that was 5 years ago.
And that was 5 years ago. Wow.
6 years ago. 5 years ago?
Have you been doing yoga before, or was acroyoga your first connection to yoga, or how did that happen?
Okay, good question. So I did this in 2015. I experienced my first yoga class maybe in 2002, 2003. I did 2-3 classes in Antigua and then didn't really do much with it. In 2007, I signed up for a course in San Marcos. Actually, that's how I began my connection with San Marcos on Lake Atitlan. At a meditation space called Pyramids, a meditation center. And they run a course called the Moon Course, which lasts 1 month, in which you do a yoga every day. You study dreams, you study metaphysics, and esoteric studies. It's really a course about an introduction to spirituality and the unseen. And you also study meditation practice. And at the end of the month, the last 5 days, you go into silence and you can choose to fast also. So both of these were the first time I was doing that. and you ask a certain question each day, and you answer them on different levels, on the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. Same question. And I came out of this process glowing, of course, coming out of 5 days. And also, I remember there was a big fundamental inner shift of actually wanting to help people, which before was never really a thing for me, I have to say.
Yeah.
I guess that's part of Western upbringing, where you've got to fight for yourself. You got to study, make yourself happy, find a job, find wealth, find abundance, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's really about survival for most of us. And really, at least for me, it wasn't about others. And so that switched in that time. So that's how I came into having a yoga practice since
Okay.
2007 regularly.
And back then, were you already on that journey of yeah, having one experience after the other, or because that's what you mentioned before, you had that existential crisis and took your time to dive deeper, where you then found acroyoga and eventually the eagle's nest. Was that already that phase where you bouncing from, because that's what I see here with a lot of digital nomads that come here, they bounce from one experience to the next, right? Was that your life back then already, or was that after that retreat, that moon
What do you
retreat?
mean bouncing from one experience to the next? You mean
Um,
like
in your intro, you told us about that you had already that nomadic lifestyle. As far as I understood, you were a lot in Guatemala, but life was kind of, yeah, you had your daughter where you were cultivating that relationship with and where you wanted to be the good father, but it felt for you like just having one experience after the next. That's what I understood.
yeah, I didn't feel I was cultivating anything in terms of like building something in my life, something that was meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that it's really, and this is my personal view, and it's not necessarily for everyone. However, I feel that I'm here to experience everything there is to experience,
Mm-hmm.
or as much as I can experience in terms of being a human living life on Earth. And I feel we definitely have to experience one thing after the next, in the sense that if you don't, you don't know what's out there. So you have to explore
Mm-hmm.
what's out there. However, if you explore all your life, yeah, exploring your life is definitely something that I feel is necessary, because to remain curious about life and about self. However, at some point, I feel it's important to focus on certain things, whatever excites you most. And
Yeah.
the process of discovering that is through this experimenting and through this exploration. And so it's like a funnel, right? So you go out in the world, you see what there is, what you like sticks, focus on that, and then go deeper with that. And how do you know you found what is meant for you? I mean, you go, oh, I like this, I'll go deep with this. But like, there's so many other things. It's like, when do you stop looking and go deeper with something? Or when do you keep on looking just in case? You know, it's a little
Yeah.
bit the mentality. And
Yeah.
that's, that's been my approach. I feel like when you're very sort of broadly, when you're in your 20s or like teenager, like 20s, when you're also free from your family, from education mostly, maybe not free from a job, but that's the trick, right?
Mm-hmm.
In your 20s is the time to maybe explore what's out there. In your 30s, maybe you focus a little more. In your 40s and beyond, maybe you found that thing and you go very, very far with it.
Yeah.
Of course, you can change the age range. It doesn't have to be that. However, it's just as a, you know, an idea of maybe how to go about
Life. Yeah.
living an exciting life where you've seen a lot of things, and then out of that you've picked the things that you're most excited about, and out of that you can go deeper, and then not just necessarily whether it's to make a living or whether it just excites you in the creative process,
Yeah.
or whether it's the channel through which you give back.
Yeah.
through which you combine your creativity, your intellect, your connections with others in building something that actually adds something to people's lives or to society. And yeah, that's in a nutshell. That's
Yeah.
does that answer your question?
Uh, it does and it doesn't, because I also think that there's a new trend where people are just on the run, and they call it they have experiences, and it also always needs to be hyper and needs to top the thing they did last, and they are a little bit disconnected from the world and themselves and hide behind that nomadic lifestyle. And I also
Yeah,
believe that,
yeah.
for example, in my case, I know that I'm a lifelong learner. Before, I always thought I get easily bored, and it's a flaw of mine. But in fact, I just like to learn. So I go deep in my topics, but then I'm done, and I need to learn something new, else I get bored. So there's
Yeah,
also this
yeah,
kind of person. But same as you, now that
yeah,
I'm 41 soon, so I feel also like, okay, it's time to settle down a little bit. It's time to
yeah,
get a little bit calmer. Maybe it
yeah.
also has something to do with the pandemic, who knows? But yeah, I think I'm one of those people who, after 5 years, I need to switch the
Yeah,
hobby or whatever, need a new
yeah,
injection in my life.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So two things come up for me with this. Oh, hang on, alarm's going off. Here we go. Let me just take that off. First one, old paradigm. Learn when you're a kid. Once you're, a certain age, you know everything there is to know. Kids, be quiet. I know better. I'm an adult. I think that's old style thinking, old school. And there's an idea, there's a concept that when you stop learning, you die.
Yeah.
And so if you want to stay young, one of the secrets of eternal youth is to always be curious and till the day you die.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, like, to always be curious, to always learn, and whatever your approach or strategy for that is, if it means you got to change topics every few years, great. All right. It keeps you curious, or stay with the same topic, but go deeper and deeper,
Yeah.
or start fusioning, add different things to a core interest. So that's one thing. So I agree with you about the curiosity is, for me, that's a pillar to lifestyle design of keeping youthful or staying youthful in your outlook, in your ways, and I believe that will also keep you healthier, and on average, you will
Fulfilled.
die
Yeah.
happier, fulfilled, older, for sure. The other aspect that comes about with what you mentioned, according to your observations of the digital nomad era, and okay, next thing, different thing, keep going, it's like, which is something that when I was exploring, I feel there's a native, intrinsic, curious aspect to exploring, which justifies the exploration. I was at some point asking myself, am I exploring because I'm curious, which is what the reason I'm justifying myself for the exploration for, or do I have an issue with commitment? So that was a question that came up when it feels not finding my passion. I'm like, do I just not want to commit? And that's how I justify keeping exploring. Yet I feel there's a genuine desire and curiosity about exploration. But how do I reconcile the two between, like, keep going, keep exploring, always try something new, versus like, maybe I've already come across that thing that can be my passion. I'm just not paying attention. So that's an internal personal exercise to say, like, what the fuck is going on? Oops, excuse my French.
No worries.
And how do you know? And like, I was asking myself both questions. I'm like, oh, what's going on? Am I okay? Am I? I don't know. What is going on? And I feel that's more of an internal spiritual or hard line questioning about, is my exploration genuine curiosity, or is there a background fear of committing to something?
And running away from whatever.
Yeah. Am I running away from something? And it's like, no one can answer that for you. You've got to figure that out for yourself. Are you running away? Are you running away from something? Or have you just not found that thing yet?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's a tough question, and I see it a lot here in others as well. But maybe let's come back to acroyoga. That was then your thing, apparently. This was your passion.
Yeah, supposedly still is. However, I got a little bit sidetracked with building a retreat space.
Just to have all the other beautiful acroyogis around you and sharing.
Yes, yes, and then some. The spirit of acroyoga is really broadened to an invitation for those seeking to connect and explore the greatness of their soul to come and play. Not just acroyogis. It's broader than acroyoga. Of course, acroyoga is a component, and I'll always have a soft spot for hosting acroyoga, and there's acroyoga workshops, but we have so many other things happening, notably a lot of dance, ecstatic dance especially, and a lot of dance practices associated with that. For example, contact improvisation is also very in the moment, spontaneous, intuitive dance practice, where people can connect in dance, especially in ecstatic dances. And it's a part of movement arts, and it's definitely an exploration, outside the disco, like definitely in a sober state, where people aren't necessarily professional dancers, although professional dancers can engage with that. And a beautiful way for people to connect. Also, contact beyond contact is another practice. There's actually a fusion of different dance practices. Now also a lot of other explorations, breath work, cacao ceremonies, a lot of artists, musicians, painters and sculptors, and so it's attracting and so much more. It's attracting a lot of arts, movement arts, definitely is a pillar, but not necessarily all movement arts. However, arts about a good life balance exploration. So we're still exploring.
Yeah.
I'm still exploring, even though it's now focused on the passion that was acroyoga, and now a passion that's really about what does living our best life look like? What components seem to be pillars in a good life balance? And of course, it's in the space. It's very inspiring, and the majestic panorama, and not just that. Then there's so many aspects of the space in design, architecture, and experiences that is there to support whatever is being created in the container on multiple layers. It's really about creating a lot of layers in creating a rich, very powerful, heightened life experience, but also to find calmness. We definitely, one of the methods is really about introducing movement. I feel because as human beings on earth, even though, whether we connect with being spiritual beings or not, that's not really important. For those who aren't so spiritual, then that's not really a thing. For those who are, it is. But for human beings on earth, I feel movement is definitely a practice that needs to be explored, because if we don't move, we're not going to be so healthy.
Yeah. And it's also just movement. I mean, it's a form of expressing yourself in the end, right? But you touched on so many things. Now let me circle back to, did you create the entire build and it's amazing. No worries about that.
I'm sorry, so many things come up.
I'm not in a rush, so it's all good. But Greg, what did I want to ask you? Did you build the Eagle's Nest by yourself, or did you take it over? or did it grow, or did you have that? I mean, we know now that acroyoga kicked everything off, but how did you then jump from acroyoga, from having the eagle's nest? What happened? How did that go? We know that Guatemala was you decided Guatemala is your home base, and the lake, and then
yeah. So
acroyoga
that's
happened, and then how did
at that time. At that time, I had my house, which was a little studio apartment on the land, and I was already starting to build a couple of cabins. The idea was to Airbnb a couple of cabins, and then I had a huge garden. There was, when I bought the land, it was just a coffee that was in a not very good state, coffee trees, coffee bushes, and then one big tree on the land. That was it. There was about 3,500 square meters of land. That was really a big garden, a lot to deal with. After I asked myself the question, I wrote to my teacher, to my acroyoga teachers who I did the training with, and I was like, if I was to build a yoga deck, a space like for acro, how big should I build it? And so I was already starting, to think, and they said, the answer was like as big as possible. I was like, oh, okay. And yeah, within a few more weeks, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to build a big platform. And there was a big rock on the land that weighed a few tons, which I would sit on and contemplate the view. And that was where the space began. That rock is now the center altar, the middle of the platform. If you look at pictures looking back towards where the now DJ booth sits on top, there's a huge rock. And that was the center and beginning of building this platform. Yeah, so I came back in November 2015. And then I started asking myself the question, maybe in November. In December, I was asking my teachers. In January, I started reaching out to a bio constructor who had experience building with bamboo. And in February, we started digging.
Mm-hmm.
In February of 2016. And I had a platform. We did our first inaugural retreat in January of 2017. So 10 months later, we had a platform.
Wow.
So yes, I built it.
It sounds all so natural, but were there any crises in between where you were like, why am I doing this? Do I have to do this? Can I just not find a simpler way of life? This sucks.
All right. So so you're missing a chapter which I didn't share. I mean, between 2004 and 2008, I made $1 million.
Made $1 million
online.
Okay.
And then after that, I was like, okay, great. That was one of my life goals. And I'm 30 and I've done it. And then I didn't realize it at the time. And that's what led to the existential crisis. It took me 2 or 3 years to realize I'd run out of dreams. And even though I was free and I could do what I want and be where I want, I was like, what am I doing? What do I want? So I was now confronted with that question, which I delayed and pushed back, of saying, what do I want from this life? What do I want to do? Who am I? Which I guess the question had come up, but like, I'll study engineering and that will tell me, I'll get that job and, I'll know. But the answer never came really about really what it was that I wanted to do. And, when I make that goal, I'll know. And there I was. I'd done this. That was my dream. And then I was like, are you satisfied now? I'm like, well, yeah, but no. And so, yeah, it basically, it took that to realize that now I had means and resources, but I still had not answered the question. Which is why it's important to answer the question.
It's also, I mean, I think it's also a very mature thing to sit down and ask the question in the first place, right?
Yeah, but I feel like if we don't know where to start answering, we find ways of not, or we try, but it's not really it. Or we find an answer, but it's a superficial answer. It's like, oh, that'll do. Yeah. Yeah. Or it's like, what do you need and what do you want? And what do you really need? Like, what is in your highest alignment, your soul alignment? What will nourish your core? And so that led to the existential crisis, which led to community being the deciding factor of where I wanted to live. And of course, a very inspiring space. I'd always felt inspired in San Marcos. I could see and feel and breathe that people were building their dreams, And that spirit, that essence is definitely one of the reasons why I live here. That originally I was I was taking a lot of inspiration. I wasn't giving back so much, but I was taking a lot of inspiration, going, wow, every house is different because every person built their house according to what they wanted and what was moving them, as opposed to, law and code, and it's got to be done like this because, I was seeing little elf houses everywhere. Yeah. And so that was really, really inspiring because I was moving into a space where the majority of people were being guided by something that was part of a dream or part of something very deep and internal and very, very pleasing, and an expression of their soul or their creative flair as well. And so that was how I eased into it. And and then to articulate that and to go deep with that of what's the highest expression that you can come up with, which then aligns with some kind of purpose of your existence. It's a tough question, and it's one that took running out of dreams to then realize what is going on, to then say, okay, I need to set some new dreams, and they need to be off the planet. Like, these need to be dreams that I can never reach, in the sense that it needs to be a guiding spirit, it needs to be a guiding essence, it almost needs to be a feeling. Not in the sense that, oh, I'll never get there. Well, in a way, like, shoot for the stars and you'll land on the moon is a way of saying it. But it's not necessarily that. I feel it's like you fulfill it by living it. And
and being on the way to the stars, if that makes sense. Right?
Yeah, and so the dream is more of a feeling. And sure, there'll be certain, chapters in the story towards sort of the guidance to the stars. And so some days you'll wake up and go, today is significant because today, this big step is being completed. However, it's a journey.
Yeah.
It's a journey, and very much like, okay, do you want an anecdote, which is, again, part of the symbols that are weaved at the eagle's nest? Unless you want to go back to one of your questions.
No, later. Tell me the anecdote.
So, have you heard of the Camino de Santiago, St. James's Way?
In Santiago de Compostela, in Spain.
Yeah. Yes. And so, for those who aren't familiar, it's where one of the apostles is buried. And there's a story as to why he's buried there, but basically, in the 800s after Christ, pilgrims started going there, and you would start from your home, wherever it were, if it was in Russia or Scotland or Paris, wherever. And so today it's a thing, right? You can do it either because you're a Catholic or Christian, or because it's a spiritual enterprise, or some people do it just because it's there as a challenge.
Yeah.
So I did it more as a spiritual undertaking journey. And I walked over 1,000 kilometers from France to Santiago de Compostela. And on the way, you would say, you would greet the other pilgrims, and you would bid them, buen camino peregrino, have a nice journey, pilgrim. And I remember getting to Santiago de Compostela, and you go to the cathedral where they give you your little scroll in Latin. And with my scroll, I'm like, yes, I've made this. And when you leave, they say, buen camino peregrino. I'm like, but I've completed it. It's like, well, no, your journey has just begun. This is just the first step. Mm-hmm. And so that's the anecdote about, even if you have a goal in mind, it's the journey, it's the spirit of what got you there is actually one step in a longer journey. So even though there are chapters or sections within that dream, it's more of a lifestyle. It's more of a feeling. It's more of a guiding spirit. And so I feel these are keys, or these are aspects of designing or aligning your dreams with your true calling. And how do you design, or how do you pick the dreams that are well intentioned, or that are set up, that are setting you up for success, in terms of really true dreams. I would definitely look for those qualities. And sure, if one day you want to own a little dream cottage in a specific place, or have a Ferrari, these are more like goals, right? However, dreams are more ineffable. They're more of a feeling than an actual check mark.
Yeah, one other sentence that struck a chord, I think that's the expression in your language, in English, for me, was that you were taking a lot from the community. You took a lot of inspiration, and then you realized you also want to give back. Did you realize then that you have to be some kind of a leader as well in order to give back?
I'll answer that, but first I want to, before I finish my carafe, if your glass is half full or empty, you first have to take and take and take and take and take until
don't spill it over your
computer. I'm out of water in the carafe, and once it's completely full, then you keep filling it, and what overflows is what you give back. And so what you give back actually nourishes you. And so that's where you align serving yourself and serving others, because you make sure your glass is always full. And so you have to be selfish in being selfless. And that's one lesson that a lot of people miss, because they go, oh, I got to go save the world, the poor people here. It's like, sure. However, if you don't make sure your glass is full the whole way, you might end up with an empty glass. And you might end up, being an old, shriveled up, whatever, whether there's
bitter,
inner resentment, or just bitterness, or just depletion, where if you're depleted, you're going to get sick. If you get sick, you're not going to be able to serve as efficiently, if at all, or you might die prematurely. And so that's definitely a really important key to understand. To serve well, you have to be selfish.
Yeah.
You have to make sure that it's aligned with serving yourself in the process.
Yeah.
So
and once you reach that, is it coconut water, by the way?
This one is hot lemon water.
Ah, also good.
Yeah.
No, it has the color of coconut water a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really beautiful insight you were just sharing. Yeah. And then you felt, okay, now I'm ready to serve. Now I'm ready to give back.
Yeah. So for being a leader, I guess that's within my spirit. It wasn't something I was particularly looking forward to. Even the name, I was doubting. Eagle's Nest. I was like, that's too strong of a name, and I don't want to build a space for that. And so I was looking for other names. However, you get all the there are eagles, but most of the birds you see are vultures. However, they're flying right in front of the space, and that's originally what inspired the name for my Airbnb listing. And I was
The
like,
vulture's
Eagle's
nest.
Nest. Yeah, well, not quite the same. But I was like, I don't know if I want to call it Eagle's Nest because it's such a powerful name, and that's not me in the sense that I don't want to do it for just showing off. Um, and then I came across the notion that the eagle is a power animal that represents transformation. And as soon as I read that, I was like, oh, well then, eagle's nest it is.
Yeah.
Because yes, this space is for transformation and inspiration.
Yeah.
And going back to your question about leadership, I that's not something I necessarily. I've come from not loving myself, like as a teenager in my 20s, and so for being out there, a leader in the spotlight, that's not something that appealed
Sits
to
well.
me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's not one of the things that motivated me. However, I guess it comes with a job.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
guess having built a space like this, I guess it's a responsibility that I have to wear,
Yeah.
um and so I'm learning.
Yeah. But
I'm
I mean,
learning.
I read the one of the last blog articles was about someone who stayed with you as a volunteer, I think, and he wrote about that. Yeah, it's all in flow. That's how he perceives it, and there are no. He came from, I think, he was kind of an animation guy in a big hotel chain, and then he came to
Oh.
you, and finally he was able to breathe and flat hierarchies, and you figure it out somehow, and it's what you make out of it at Eagle's Nest. That's what that was what the essence was of it at the end. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you figure you figure it out. I suppose we also have a certain culture there,
Yeah.
and he came from quite an extreme context. A we're a business, but we're
Yeah.
also a community. And
Uh-huh.
he came from a
Mm.
all inclusive holiday resort.
Yeah.
Uh, and I've been to those, like for example, Club Med. I don't think he was at a Club Med, but where it's fun and stuff. However, it's fun, it's entertainment and all that. However, we're working the layers. We're not just about. We're definitely fun should be part of life for sure. However, there's a little more meaning
Mhm.
and a little more intention and quite a few more layers to all the design and inspiration that gravitates around the space. And also all the practices are every single practice somehow every single practice connects to not just well-being. It's not even the movement practices, it's not just well-being. There's a whole tradition of spirituality or uh, wanting to improve oneself. Even acroyoga, that's not as spiritual, but because there's the yoga component, it is connected with other layers that evolve or that inspire personal evolution beyond just the physical practice and strength training and poise and grace and communication style between people. Like there's so many layers to all the practices that you can't help but be affected even if you're experiencing that practice for the first time, by the profoundness of the practice, the profoundness of the space, the profoundness of all the symbols, and the profoundness of all the people surrounding you. It's like there's just so many layers that
also the practicalities of life,
it's
I
a strong dose.
Yeah, I mean, for me right now, it sounds all very, oh, you're just floating through your day, but I guess you also have to deal with plumbing issues and grocery shopping and all those things. Or did you manage to, now I'm talking more from a resort management perspective, did you manage to find people for the mundane things of your business?
Oh my God. Yeah, that's been definitely I don't want a struggle. A struggle. It's not a struggle. It's there is really quite a flow there. However, I just want to focus on the things that excite me the most, and of course the practicalities of running a space that's growing, a space of that magnitude, a space that's right now on the verge of, I feel, going viral, because it's been around now for a few years. What we're doing more and more. And so actually just this week we were interviewing for a general manager. I haven't had a general manager in 5 years. It's kind of landed on me, or we've been doing most things pretty well, but all these little the tourist information questions or the plumbing issues, I'm like, I care, but I'm just not interested in them. And so, and because I know everything, everyone comes to me of like, Greg, this is not working. Greg, I locked my key inside my room. Greg, the safe's not working. Greg, there's a leak in the thing. Greg, there's ants in my room. I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm about to transition out of that, and my goal this year is to make myself completely redundant.
That's anyway a healthy thing, right, to do. So
I want myself to be completely redundant. I want the operation to function really well, to do it better, so that we even preempt guest needs, and that all this is built into the system. Now, not having studied hotel management, I haven't studied hospitality, so everything is being learned organically. Everything has been built organically. I didn't study building. I studied electronic engineering with computer science and remote sensing of the earth. I'm an engineer.
Oh, cool.
I'm a geek. I'm a nerd.
Yeah.
I'm a problem solver. So that's what we're doing. We're solving a big problem. We're solving the problem of people feeling unfulfilled and people figuring out how to live healthy, balanced lives. That's a huge problem that needs to be solved. It's a huge mission. It's a bit like Elon Musk wanting to land on Mars. Like we're taking a stab at solving, like, people feeling fulfilled, aligned, connecting with their dreams, connecting with their bodies, having good, healthy life practices. That's $1 billion problem.
Yeah.
Now these little pesky, I lost my keys. Like I need to, definitely. Like as soon as I can get this taken care of by a team that does it and that does it well, because I can be good at that, but that's not what I want to focus my energies on.
Now it's also fair enough, right? You built it now for 5 years, and now it's time for the next step. It's also quite natural.
No, as we're expanding this year, and we're about to launch a residential program.
Cool.
This Monday. There is exactly that. It's called Arise. Arise as in elevate. And it's going to be a 3-month program, but we're launching it as a week-to-week, where effectively each week is like a retreat where we do just that. We're exploring movement, connection with community, different practices, nutrition, different speakers, different talks about different things that seem to be relevant in this current age of like, how do we make sense of our lives? How do we make sense of all this information and reduce it to like, what is it that you need? So yeah, as we're launching that, this year is pivotal, I feel, and I feel a lot of the existential little details will ripple into place this year. They need to, in order for then everything else to expand, and then for me to focus on curation and on creating whatever the next steps are. And it's really about curating dream experiences. That's what I'm most excited about.
Sounds exciting, yeah. I have one last question for you, Greg, and it's more about you mentioned previously a lot community. How do you feel like integrated in Guatemala, in the local community? I understand San Marcos is more like an expat community, and yeah, I'm interested in how you integrate in the local Guatemalan community.
Yeah, very good question. So San Marcos is first and foremost a traditional Mayan village. There's about between, I believe, 4,000 and 5,000 locals living there. And maybe about 30 years ago, the first outsiders started living there 35 years ago. Pyramids, the meditation center that I mentioned was one of the first. There were others, and that was the first wave. And with that was created then the expat community built around that, with the theme of spirituality, in big part because of this first meditation center that was set up there. And so now we probably have an expat community of a few hundred people that live in San Marcos, and then a neighboring town called Sunana also. It's expanding into that town and growing. And then there's a big community of seasonal residents that come for a few weeks or a few months at a time. And a lot of them also, with the effect of COVID, I feel that's accelerating the desire to want to live in this environment. Also because, to put it bluntly, even though COVID's a thing in the world, we live as though COVID does not exist. So that's a growing part. Integration with locals is let's see, the locals are not so integrated in a sense of becoming teachers or offering a lot of services in the well-being or the spiritual aspects. There, of course, there's a lot of employment opportunities. So in that sense, the village is becoming prosperous thanks to that, thanks to this type of tourism. And in that sense, is it integrated? Is it not? There's a form of integration through most people getting employment, either in construction or servicing the expats living there, or servicing the tourism that's coming through. And of course, that's sustaining development in town. You can see it, the locals are becoming more prosperous. However, it is a trickle economy. They're not the direct beneficiaries of the majority of the money that's coming in. However, it's no different probably in your hometown, where of course the businesses are, making the majority of the money. However, it's creating a lot of employment for the locals. And you see it's benefiting the local economy compared to, say, other villages that don't have this kind of tourism, all the locals now, you see a lot more motorbikes in town. You see, you know, a lot of them can actually have a day job. They buy themselves a tuk-tuk. There's a shitload of tuk-tuks in town. So the economy is trickling, and the local villages are building up wealth through this. However, I guess those who are being critical of like, yeah, but then the foreigners are making, you know, most of the money. It's like, yeah, sure. Could the locals be integrated better? Sure. I mean, I would love for, you know, better education, or for them to learn how to use the internet. One thing is most locals now have a smartphone, so they're all connected. If you go back 5 years, that was not the case. So that, you know, I'm seeing the development. However, what do you do with your smartphone? Like most are playing games, or, you know, using WhatsApp and messaging. But it's like, so it's like, I feel that there's a huge opportunity now. Once all the locals have smartphones, it's like, okay, now we can teach you how to use it if you want to, for developing wealth, for developing abundance, for, you know, it feels like now the only thing that stands in the way of them potentially becoming digital nomads without needing to move is that once they find their niche online, they can make money on an equal footing to most foreigners. So I feel
I mean, it sounds like I have no idea about Guatemala and San Marcos. So sorry that my questions are really kind of uneducated. But
Sure.
do you feel that they have, there is some, from San Marcos, do you think you can learn something from their culture? It sounds like there is a rich culture in that country already, with the long history and so on.
So, yeah, regarding culture, okay, let me pick some examples where integration seems to actually be really working. So with the main cosmovision,
it sounds already like a
the
spiritual
main
place,
belief system.
Right?
Yeah, it is. And so there are a few spiritual guides and shamans, and so they're very busy. All the spiritual guides are very involved with a lot of the offerings, especially related to, of course, with their own people, and also a lot of the foreigners and visitors are very curious, and very there's a lot of demand for those kinds of ceremonies, and to learn, reclaim, not revive, but maintain or expand these ancient belief systems and traditions that have been, for the most part, stamped out by the Catholic or the Christian belief systems. You know, that's the try to eliminate that through attracting the belief towards the Christian belief system. And so that's definitely been, there's been an effervescence. Also, cacao is revived. Although as far as I understand it, it's revived by a gringo who started using cacao 20, 30 years ago, a guy called Keith. But now it's being used, it's returning and being used by the locals ceremonially. Of course, the foreigners love the cacao ceremony. You can put cacao with pretty much any activity, and it'll add to the activity. Of course, it's a heart opener. It's a spirit plant. So these definitely are a couple of examples where local traditions. From our part, once in a while, say with our workers, then we'll also do meals together, and that's a time as well for exploring tradition, in the sense how would the locals spend or share a meal together. And so anecdotes coming about how when when they were kids, what they used to do, and they used to fish for crabs around the lake, and they would make this traditional dish with the little fish they catch. And so in that sense, we're also sharing some of the local customs of the way of life, their tradition. Of course, the tradition that's very alive today is the tortilla. Of course, that goes back hundreds of years, and we definitely also that's a tradition we see. And you know, the locals do their tortilla. They take their corn to the mill every morning. The women will make the tortilla. You can see all the chimneys smoking in the village when you wake up, because these kinds of traditions certainly are not dying. They're very alive, and we get to share some of those aspects.
Beautiful. That's beautiful answer. I love hearing these experiences. Yeah, Greg, I mean, I'm at the end of my questions. Is there something you wished we should have touched upon and you want to add on from here? Or did you think this conversation will evolve like that?
Well, thank you for that last question. Actually, this is the style of conversations that I usually have when I'm just chatting with people, and you never know. I never know what we're going to end up talking about, but it's always really, really interesting and usually really profound. And so no, I had no idea which way it would go, and I didn't care because I knew it would be interesting one way or another.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. So there's nothing you'd like to add? Oh, it says my internet connection is unstable. I hope you still hear me. Ah, there you are again. Sorry, I had a Wi-Fi glitch.
Yes, it's good timing for the Wi-Fi glitch towards the end of the
Yeah, because I mean, everyone who will listen to this, you have to know that we just said hello for a minute, and then we immediately went into recording, and I just started asking questions. So just for everyone who sees this, this is how we planned that interview here. Yeah, but the last word is yours, Greg.
The last word is mine. Oh, such pressure. What will I say last? In the end, I feel that curiosity is one of the big pillars of living young and living fulfilled. Selfishness, despite the fact that it's a taboo for those wanting to serve, is really important. Really important. And surround yourself by people that inspire you. Mm-hmm. Have conversations like this one. Explore your fears. Areas where you have shame or where you feel guilt, and activate it, release it, become current, so you don't have that load on your shoulders. And stop doing what you don't enjoy.
Like
follow
plumbing issues, like solving ants in the room.
Yeah, it's not to say that, hey, I could really enjoy plumbing. I could enjoy anything I set my mind to. It's really about priorities. Is there anything you'd rather do? I mean, right here, right now is really important. So be right here, right now, and in flow with what is. So if it's about plumbing, fucking enjoy it. Fucking enjoy fixing that pipe.
Yeah.
However, if that becomes your day to day and what you end up doing 50% of your day, and you go, well, that's not what excites me the most, then shift.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, just to recap, these would be some of the things we touched on, and these would be some of the keys. Easier said than done.
Totally. And
However,
yeah.
they're good nuggets of gold.
Yeah, and the Eagle's Nest sounds like the place to explore that and more.
Definitely. So yeah, if you want to come and visit us, then you'd be most welcome. We have a website and we have a Facebook account and an Instagram, and they're all
I'll link them all. Yeah.
If you link them up, Eagle's Nest Atitlan, that's how you find us. And yeah, coming up, we're right now exploring what would a virtual community look like.
Oh, okay.
Not on these platforms. These are part of, you know, being seen. However, creating a virtual community, what would that look like? How would we add value to people's lives? Whether it's classes and courses and things like that, but much more connecting community in a way where community can add value to itself. Are things we're exploring. How do we make that virtual, and how can we really enable for people to add value to one another through a virtual community? So that's cutting edge stuff. But let's see if we talk again in a year or so, in 6 months, maybe we will have made progress with answering that question.
Sounds super cool. Yeah, okay. Thanks so much, Greg. And
thank you, Patricia.
I'll stop recording here.
Okay, all right.